Hello, I'm Bill Wiadrowski from LifeWise Pet Nutrition, and today's question comes from Fee, who wants to know what the energy content of our foods are. Well, that's really an interesting one, because what Fee is trying to do is work out a more accurate method of determining how much food to feed the dog. And obviously, if you know how much energy is in the food, then you've got a better idea of being able to calculate a feeding rate. There are a lot of drawbacks to this, of course, because the actual feeding rate is then going to be determined by the efficiency of use of the nutrients, in other words, how available those nutrients are to digestion, but more importantly, what the concentration of nutrients is relative to the energy level of the food. So a really simple way, well actually it's not that simple, but a way of calculating this is to use what we call Atwood factors to do an analysis of the food and calculate how many grams of protein per 1,000 kilocalories of energy is in the food. This is then going to give us a yardstick for how much we're going to feed. So if we took an average sort of a diet and we said that we've got 25% protein, 15% fat, sometimes you usually get a fibre level to the diet, but let's say assume that diet's got 5%. Ash is sometimes quoted, we'll assume 8%. So those figures are fairly generic and quite common in most of the super premium foods in the market today. Most foods will have 10% or slightly less of moisture, so we'll allow 10%. But the one measurement that's missing on the label is going to be the nitrogen-free extract figure, or NFE as it's commonly known, which is fundamentally the carbohydrate content of the diet. But we need to know that because the big contributors of energy to the food are the protein, the fat, and the NFE. So to find the NFE, we have to do a bit of a calculation. We add up all of these things, protein, fat, fibre, ash, moisture, and NFE, that will come to 100%. So what we do is we add them all up, and deduct that from 100, and the answer we get for NFE in this case is 37%. And NFE is always calculated by this method. It is a calculation based on the presence of all the other components of the food. Once we know that, we've got our three major contributors to energy. This one, and this one. And what we can do now is we can use Atwood factors to calculate the actual energy level of the diet. And the Atwood factors for protein are 3.5. For fat, the Atwood factor is 8.5. And for NFE, it's 3.5. So what we do to work this out is that we multiply the number of grams of protein in our food by 3.5. So in this case, it's a 25% protein, so that means that there's 250 grams of protein in every kilogram. So if we multiply the 250 grams by 3.5, we get the answer of 875. And the Atwood factor for fat is 8.5, so if we were to multiply the 150 grams, because it's 15% of 1,000, is 150. 150 grams times 8.5, we're going to have 1,275 kilocalories of energy contributed from a kilogram of this food. And for the NFE content of the food, we said it was 37%, which is 370 grams of NFE in our kilogram of food. Multiply that by our Atwood factor of 3.5, and we get the answer, which is 1,295 kilocalories. If we add those up, we can see it adds up to 3,445 kilocalories per kilogram of food. So we now have a standardised method, we can compare most foods to see what the energy level is. Now, Atwood factors are not the be-all to end-all. Certainly, a lot of this is determined by the availability of nutrients in the food, or put another way, the quality of the ingredients that are used in manufacturing the food. But as a rule of thumb, it works reasonably well. Atwood factors would rarely give you an energy level that's higher than what's actually in the food, but the actual energy level of the food could well be lower by virtue of poor quality ingredients. Once we know that, what we do then is we want to calculate how many grams of protein are in 1,000 kilocalories of energy. So that means that we've got 250 grams of protein, and we divide that by 3.445 because we've got 3.445 lots of 1,000s in our kilogram of food. And if we do that, we end up with an answer which says we've got 72.5 grams of protein for every 1,000 kilocalories of energy in the food. So what does that tell us? Well, not a lot on its own, but this is a very useful method to be able to compare one food to another. When we look at the NRC recommendations from the Academy of Sciences, they say that anything below 90 grams of protein per 1,000 kilocalories is the medium range. Below 50 is low, and over 90 obviously is high. What we find in today's market, we find a lot of foods that give us Atwood figures that are way over 100. And what that actually tells us is that a lot of the protein in the food is being used as an energy source. And that's placing a burden on the body. That's a stressor. And that is one of the recipes for renal issues going forward. Too much protein in the food means that there's a heavy load on the kidneys, and we don't want our animals suffering from kidney damage. So it's useful to work out this. For an average adult in healthy, active adult, we would expect the actual figure here to be down around about the 60 mark. Lower down is better, particularly if you've got a high efficiency food with high quality ingredients. You can actually get down below 60 and you'll have a very, very healthy animal, because that's reducing the load on the body in terms of digestive efficiency and the bodily functions that accompany that. But as we go up, we get into this higher stress type areas, and for an adult eating over 90 grams of protein per day per 1,000 kilocalories of energy, that's not good at all. Puppy foods, we would expect to see that up around about the 80 to 90 grams of protein, provided that, once again, that the protein sources are good, the digestibility factors are high. But once again, more than that is not going to achieve any substantial gain in the well-being of the animal. It's more than likely going to make the animal fat, because you've got an excess of protein. Excesses of protein are generally stored in the body as fat. So there you go, Fee. I hope that helps you a little bit. You can sit down and do your calculations using these Atwood factors, and you'll be able to, it gives you a system to be able to classify the effectiveness or efficiency factors of food. It's not the be-all to end-all by a long shot, but it is a far more accurate way of looking at these things. There are other factors that you would want to bring into consideration when you're actually assessing the diet, like the ingredients used, the different ingredients that are there, and the general spread or source of those ingredients. But in general terms, as far as energy density is concerned, this is not a bad starting point. So there you go, Fee. Hope it answers your question, and if you've got any more, please send them in. But until next time, we'll see you later.